Hello guys, today we are going to do functions of the government and basics about government budget. What is the function of the government? Government carries out various distinct functions through revenue and expenditure measures of government budget. Now how does the government function? The primary source of government functioning is revenues as well as expenditure of the government budget. If the government has no revenues, it cannot do anything in an economy, and it uses these revenues through expenditure in order to bring desired changes in the economy. What are the basic three functions which are carried out by the government? First is allocation function, second is distribution function, and third is stabilization function. What is allocation function? There are various goods and services which are considered as public goods. For example, defense, roads, administration. These public goods cannot be provided by the market. As you know, defense cannot be provided by the private sector. Roads are created through PPP, but the primary accountability and the primary responsibility lies with the government. So, the government fulfills this allocation function by earning revenues and spending them in building these public goods. This is called allocation function. Second is distribution function. Through taxes and expenditure policy, the government attempts to distribute fairly income in the society. Now, if there is no distribution function, what will happen is some people will have a lot of money and some people will have no money, and there will be no redistribution of income. So, if I have uh, crores of rupees and I don't have any tax liability on me, then I will keep earning more and more through that money. But a person who has no money will have no opportunities to earn money out of nowhere. That's where the government comes in. Government provides redistribution of this money through taxes. It takes taxes from the people who have money and distributes them to the people who do not in various methods. The third is stabilization function. For this, there are two basic functions: aggregate demand and aggregate supply. It is very important that there is a stability between aggregate demand and aggregate supply of goods and services in the market. Whenever there are fluctuations and there is a disequilibrium, the government comes into play, the government intervenes and tries to create a balance. This is what is called as stabilization function. Let me give you an example. If the prices of pulses go very high today because the aggregate demand has suddenly risen, the price of pulses go very high, but there is no enough supply to cater to that demand. So what will the government do? The government will come into play. It will either ask or incentivize the farmers to produce more, so to increase supply, or in the short term it will import a lot of pulses in order to cater to that aggregate demand and stabilize the market price. This is what is called a stabilization function. So these are the three major functions of the government which are carried out by revenue and expenditures of the government budget. Now, what is the government budget? The government budget is a constitutional requirement in India under Article 112. This is important because there is a topic in your syllabus which is called Indian political system. In that, it may be very easily asked under which article is the government budget formed, or under what article is the government budget a constitutional requirement of the government. So, under Article 112, it is the constitutional requirement of the present government to present in the parliament a statement of estimated receipts and expenditure of the government. Estimated receipts. Remember, the budget is for the coming year, not for the previous year. That is why it is called as a budget. So, estimated receipts and expenditures of the government in respect of financial year. What is the financial year? 1st April to 31st March. What does the budget comprise of? The budget comprises of two things: revenue budget and the capital budget. Now this chart very beautifully summarizes everything that you're going to need to know in government budget. First is revenue budget, second is capital budget. Both of them have two subparts which are called revenue, receipts and expenditure. Here capital receipts, capital expenditure. Whatever the government expects in the future year or the coming year to be the revenue receipts come under revenue receipts. Whatever the government expects to be the expenditures or to be where it will be spending that money comes under this. Then the area where it is expecting the government to raise some money which is capital in nature comes under capital receipts, and similarly capital expenditure. Now, from where does the government expect to raise revenue receipts? सबसे पहले आएगा टैक्स. टैक्स इज द फर्स्ट थिंग ऑब्वियसली. टैक्स कमाएंगे गवर्नमेंट से, लोगों से लेंगे. That is tax revenue, and it is revenue in nature because it is recurring first of all, and it does not create any assets. So that is why it is capital revenue receipts. Then you have non-tax revenue receipts. Non-tax revenue receipts भी बहुत सारे नेचर की हो सकती हैं. इंटरेस्ट मिल रहा है आपको, आपको डिविडेंड्स मिल रहे हैं. सो ऑल दीज आर नॉन-टैक्स but revenue receipts. Then there are revenue expenditure. What is revenue expenditure? It is divided into two things which we are going to study later: planned revenue expenditure and non-planned revenue expenditure. The similar classification is done in capital expenditure as well. Here, planned revenue expenditure, non-planned revenue expenditure. In capital expenditure also, there is the distinction is planned and non-planned. We'll study this later in the coming video. In the present video, let's come back. The capital receipts. What are these capital receipts? कहाँ से आएंगी? Debt creating or non-debt creating? Debt creating is something that you have to pay back. Is debt creating. Non-debt creating is something which you are not required to pay back. So non-debt creating would be disinvestments. Disinvestments जो आपने किया, you get money by selling your stake in a public sector unit. So the money that you raise is non-debt creating because you don't have to pay it back to anyone. Now, debt creating would be loans that you raise from the market or from international markets or from other countries. So this is how you divide the entire government budget. In the next class, we'll be breaking down these different terms and these different concepts and understand each one by one.